Let's go. What's up, Todd? How we doing, man? You're on mute if I can't hear you, brother.
Mic is off. I've been sitting here listening to you guys from the start, and I was like, this is a really long intro music session. I was like, what's happening?
Oh man.
Apparently, what was happening is I needed to be on my cell phone. So apologies for the delay, guys.
No,
No,
dude, it's
all
good.
good.
It's good to have anticipation, man. Like we appreciate you being here. We're super pumped to have this conversation. I think what makes the most sense is because people don't have the background like we do. If you wouldn't mind just kind of giving a little TLDR on who you are and what you do, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no problem. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining, everyone. My name's Todd Makurath. I I'm a producer. Came to Hollywood. With the dream. How do I start making movies? Started off at the American Film Institute. Did my master's there. Came out, christened a producer, and promptly was unemployed for 5 years. So spent a long time figuring it out, but it's kind of everyone's path, I think, out here. You kind of have to you build your network, the relationships, and it's not. I mean, I think a lot like the cryptosphere, right? It's like it's an entrepreneurial business. Like you have to build your own business. You've got to find ways to like create. You have to find ways to build community. You got to find ways to you know you know um, you know innovate that people find exciting. I mean, it's very much the same spirit. I started off doing whatever job I could just to kind of pay the rent and figure out how to move forward. And then ultimately got to a point where I decided I wanted to start my own business, and at that point it was originally in the commercial space. So we started a company called Bullet, like the Steve McQueen film. Uh, I was lucky enough to partner with first a guy named Justin Lin, did all the Fast and the Furious movies, and I kind of met with him, and was thinking like, what car brand wouldn't want to work with this guy, right? He's doing all of the coolest, biggest action movies, cars, galore. Um, and then it turns out Justin Lin went to film school with Joe Russo of the Russo brothers, and he was like, "Hey, should we bring the Russo brothers in on this?" I was like, Absolutely." The guys had done a ton of incredible TV shows, Community, Happy Endings, Up All Night, of course, Arrested Development, and they were just starting off on their Marvel career, which of course just rocketed those guys to the stratosphere. So we built this company that was around how do we bring the creative power of Hollywood to the world of advertising. That was our thesis. It was if we could give advertisers the access to these big Hollywood filmmakers, we could make better communication work. So we did that, started that company. Then the company started growing really rapidly. I ended up working with Joe and Anthony to help found a company called Agbo, the film studio, which has had some incredible success doing the Extraction franchise, um, doing the Gray Man franchise. We were producers on Everything Everywhere All at Once this past year. Um, we've now got some Citadel, which just came out I guess a week and a half ago now, on Amazon. So had some great success there. Similarly, Justin's trajectory continued to climb. He ended up, he's now been at the heart of six of the Fast movies. Directed five of them. He's the producer and writer on the newest one. And along the way, what we realized was that the production work we were doing in the commercial space, and obviously the film and TV work that the guys were doing in their own film studio businesses. There was still a gap, right, which was this creative space for advertising, because the commercial production world is one where it's you have an agency come to you and they're like, we've got this idea, can you execute it for us? What we saw was that we could do bigger and better and more exciting work if we got involved creatively, and that's where Superconductor was born. So Superconductor is a creative agency. where we like to say like we turn brands into entertainment engines, and more and more what we're seeing is that content is being driven by consumer brands, right? Like they are becoming the center of conversation, and especially I think no more no nowhere is that more apparent than in than here in the Web3 space. Creators are out there like building their own brands, building their own ideas, and they're building these communities that are empowering the growth and the participation that makes them relevant. So it's something we've been really excited about, and have been grateful to be working with you guys here at Hashflow, and kind of getting a window and a view into this world from the inside.
That was awesome. Just for everyone in the audience, I think Todd is a pretty prolific guy in the industry. When I was working at CAA, we were representing folks that Todd works with. When I was at Amazon Studios, we were partnering with Todd and his team around basically some of our biggest global franchises. And then even when I was at NBC Universal, like Todd mentioned, Community. So I think like there are very few producers that I've met in my career that have just kind of transcended every area and kind of been everywhere all at once, which may lead into the title of your indie film. But the first question, just to kind of kick it off, I think is there's an enormous list of folks wanting to collaborate with you and the team. I think like again, when I started leaking even in Hollywood, kind of where I was going, folks were all just going superconductor, superconductor when they started hearing names, which I think is a testament to kind of the brand that you guys have built in the industry. But I'd love to just better understand like what about Hashflow and Hashverse first caught your attention, because I'll be honest, like your involvement with this project is one of the things that caught my attention and got me excited about working here. And just to kind of expand beyond that, like what do you typically look for when you're deciding who and what you want to partner with, right? Because as you said before, I think entertainment's gone from very much kind of a service-based business into more of an ownership-based business. You've now launched multiple companies. Would love to just kind of dive into how that process works for you a little bit.
Sure. I wish I could say that there's a really structured process to how it is that we identify, partners and companies and brands and communities that we want to work with. But it's a very it's actually very organic in that, I think just the nature of the community that we've built, right, and the network of friends and relationships. um, it's a process whereby we're constantly talking about what it is that we believe in, and what it is that we think how we think the world could be better from from the creative value that we can add to it, and and the perspective that we bring. So it's really all about like finding those aligned you know partners, finding those partners that have a similar worldview, that think about the world the same way. And then when you find them, it's just like, oh, okay, we're thinking the same way. Like, how can we support each other in terms of what we're doing? And that started for me with Hashflow through a dinner that I had with Varun, and a close friend of ours, a mutual friend. Was like, hey, we should all go out to dinner, and we were out here in LA. He happened to be in town. We were just hanging, having some amazing Italian food, and just talking about like what we were building, what our really the vision for the company. And as soon as he described to me kind of what Hashflow stood for and what it was intended to accomplish as a business, I was just like enthralled. Like it was just such an incredible vision for DeFi and for community building. And I think Hashflow in particular was I had been paying attention to this space. I certainly wasn't like deep into it, but as I kind of started to see how Hashflow was creating in the space, and how they were identifying themselves, I was like, it was very clear that they had really unique perspective, and one that I thought was really incredible and exciting. And that was it. Then it was like, okay, how can we help? Like I think that's a big part of what we do is, we see ourselves as collaborators and a creative support infrastructure for the partners we work with. And so at that point it was really kind of helping to kind of listen and understand the ideas and the views of where the company wanted to go, and then starting to again just that feed that narrative with kind of more ideas, right? And just kind of continuing to evolve and grow, like how it is that what was potentially possible. And look, everything that we do, that again we try to do for the clients that we work with and the partners that we work with is be added value, right? And essentially extend the reach that these creators have, because ultimately like we're all creators, right? And it's all about feeding each other with these ideas that help us grow and help us thrive.
100%, man. Look, we love working with you. This partnership's been awesome, and just kind of continuing that conversation. You had some major Hollywood creative talent that did help create the incredible characters and lore for the Hashverse. What makes for good storytelling in your POV, and is there a recipe or formula that Superconductor uses when building these new worlds?
Yeah, you know what? And I love that you use POV as part of the question, because to me it's also like central to the answer. It really is about creating a point of view for the character, the world that you're building, because you know look, I mean, we're in this new world of like generative AI, and you could plug a prompt right into Stable Diffusion and pump out something that is amazingly looking really incredibly good, in terms of like kind of just a visual, right? Like an image, right? I'm seeing images come out of these generative AI tools right now that are, you know, like they look like, they're photoreal images that you might, if you were not an expert, could, would imagine are just a photograph that was taken. And, but what ends up, I think, really being important to kind of building a cohesive world around something like, a cool image or a concept or an idea, is that you have to have a really strong point of view as to what it is you're trying to say, and why that world exists. That's the kind of like deeper level thinking that really powers great storytelling. Um, you if you don't have um, characters that are conflicted, or that have challenges presented to them, because their point of view might be different than the world that they're in. These are the kind of things that create conflict. Ultimately, conflict is one of those things that drives storytelling. So it's less about plotting and kind of point A to point B, like how do we get from here to there. It's more about the emotional context, of the characters that you've built, and the the rules of this world that exists, around them.
Yeah, I mean, that's again a great breakdown. I really was kind of curious, like how you guys went about this, because again, like the agency has just created some incredible stories, and you're kind of continuing on this. You and your team have been the creative forces, behind some of the biggest global franchises. Avengers, Captain America, Fast and Furious. How do you ensure your content resonates with global audiences and succeeds in international countries?
Uh, I think the challenge here, right, with when you're talking about reaching a global audience, is that again, it's about building great foundations. Like you have to have, you can't. I think for one, maybe there's a couple things I could speak to that you kind of that are the challenge, the things that make it not work, because I think there's so many things, like you look at a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it's an amazing story. It's an incredible film. It's clearly like the work of, these, auteur filmmakers. Um, you know, but when you read that script, are you thinking, oh, this is $150 million, global box office hit? It's sometimes, hard to kind of identify like what exactly is going to, you know, connect that deeply and not connect that deeply. But I think there's common elements, right, that you can start to, when you're in the business long enough, you start to identify with. And one of those things is that, you have to respect your audience. You have to really, um, it's not about trying to pander to them. It's not about trying to, you know, give them, what you think they want. It's about being authentic, and it's about being real in terms of how you construct that story, how you construct, these characters. And again, I mean, some of the projects you mentioned that, my partners have worked on, these are major IP that have, a massive, embedded audience, and fan base behind them. Um, what I think, guys like Joe and Anthony and Justin have done with their work is that, they take these worlds, and you know, they are fans themselves, right? Like they are sitting in the position of being part of that audience, and they're exploring, like, some of the stories that excite them, and then and really, I think most, great filmmakers will tell you, and most great artists, I think, will tell you, you have to make the art for yourself first. And because if you're just trying to create for the audience, if you're just trying to create for the people that are, out in the world, and serve their needs or expectations, you're not necessarily doing the full job. You have to respect the audience, you have to understand them, but you also have to be true to kind of like, your point of view as the artist, because like that's what people are looking for. People are looking for you to kind of tell them a story, and I think that's really important. So I would say it's it really is, it's kind of twofold. You have to understand and get to know the audience. So that's really important. And then two, you have to you have to tell stories that resonate with you first. And then again, I think if you're the people who are successful in doing that, I think are the people that have, an innate taste that connects with, you know um, you know others, and that people can connect with. There's one final thing that I think is really, maybe central to some of the things that some of the stories that really have worked on a global scale, is that, they're generally very big worlds, that have, but that are telling the story of a very, kind of simple human story within that big world. Um, you know, th- that's kind of one of the things that I feel, um, really is central to allowing an individual who's watching, or participating in, some larger story. That's what really keeps them connected and grounded. Um, because, if it feels like a real human story, and a real human, kind of, there's a real human impact to that story, um, on a personal level, then, you know, then that world becomes that much more powerful, right? And that much more impactful, on their life and on the emotional journey that the audience goes on with them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. I mean, it's interesting because one of the things I've noticed in my career, not just in entertainment but also in marketing, is you can tell when someone's truly passionate about something. You can tell when someone's truly invested in something, and you can also tell when they're not. And I think it is such an important thing to look towards in franchise development, entertainment development, is just making sure that whoever your creator is or whoever your partner is, that they're really invested and they're not just doing it for a paycheck. Because I think, like, especially to your point, audiences, they can tell when something's authentic. They can tell when someone's really invested and when they can't. So kind of on that point, I think one thing I just wanted to kind of talk about a little bit is, you and I know bringing a project from script to screen is not an easy task. Bringing a project to script to screen and it becoming a franchise is an even harder task. I know it can often take years, sometimes up to 6, to even just get the first film off the ground. Can you talk a little bit just about that process and timeline, how franchise development differs from one-offs. Would love to just kind of jump into that piece a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's true that there's a ton of work that goes into building these worlds and building these franchises, and it is years of work, and it's like um, you know it's numbers of artists, right? Like coming together to kind of build. Um, so it is not something that happens overnight. Um, but I think the part of what we start with, right, is again kind of like what is this world, right? And what is it that makes this world special, right? Like, what is it that makes this world a place that is distinct and unique from our world, other than just it looks different. It's on a it's in a galaxy far, far away, right? Like, but what is it that defines the world as it exists, right? Is it a battle between good and evil, right? Is it built around the concept of justice, right? Is it built around some thematic element that gives it a purpose for existing in a storytelling realm, right? Like, what is going to power, what's that engine that's going to power this world as we explore it through these different stories? I think with everything, you have to make a great, certainly when you're creating, a franchise, or you're attempting to create a franchise, it always begins with one particular story, right? And one first film, or one, first TV series, Stranger Things, when those guys were creating that, they're working on this first this first season, and they're just trying to tell the best story they possibly can in that first season. And the hope is, okay, the hope is we get another one. um, but it's if you're really focused on doing that, like, that's kind of, again, where we start, is like, what's that human connection? What are those thematic elements that make this world unique? And then how do we find our entry point, through a character into this world? So this is one of the first things that we all talked about, when thinking about the hash verse, and thinking about, like, what does this world stand for? What is it that makes this world unique? And why is it that we want to explore it, right? Like, what are the conflicts that exist, amongst, in our world, that create challenges for our characters? And once you've kind of identified those elements, then you're now starting to really flesh it out. Because, again, you have to kind of start with those, those thematic elements, and those kind of like emotional storytelling elements that start to drive, and create, like we call an engine for the storytelling. Beginning there, and then you start moving into, okay, well, what does this world look like? And what are the rules for this world? How does this world function on a basic level? Because, again, it's storytelling. You can have worlds where you know um, gravity doesn't exist, and people can be punched in the face 100 times and not get hurt from it. But they or you can have worlds where people are fragile, and like the smallest impact can create devastation. So it's like, that's part and parcel of what we're trying to do when we begin this process. And then you're starting to really, like, build out, again, I think the kind of, you know um, once you've got those rules, then you want to start building out the lore, right? And the backstory, like, how did it become this way? Because if you can start to answer those questions, right? If it's like, how did I get to this point in this world where I'm beginning this story? If you understand if you can, define how it is you got there, well, you weren't always there, right? Like, something happened that led you to that place. And so therein, starts to illuminate, right? What are the potential conflicts, the potential characters, the potential factions within this world, and the forces in this world that have, created the today that we're looking at. And then, how do those forces impact what's to come, and where we're going? Um, So, again, this process is really one that is, I mean, it's obviously deeply creative process, but I think there's a lot of kind of you know steps and kind of I think rules of the road that we follow as we're diving in and starting to explore, you know, um, what stories people might want to go on a journey with us on.
Yeah, I love that. It's always so interesting to me. It's like every time I've ever kind of been approached around this whole world building conversation, it's like people don't realize how much organization comes into play. Because to your point, it's like you're building backstories, you're building character backstories, you're building the lore that led to the point being there, and it's just so important to think through that stuff because I think where some people really kind of hit a wall is they don't think through that enough. And then to your point earlier, they go and create some sort of successful IP, and then the story ends, or they haven't thought through kind of all the different character extensions or plotline extensions, and the world becomes very limited. You know, I think one of the things that I've enjoyed in terms of kind of working with you is you seem to be a lot more ahead of the curve than a lot of folks in the industry when it comes to tech. I know you helped pioneer live action VR, which is enormous. I'm curious, how do you look at the intersection of entertainment and technology? I know in this case with the Hashverse, we're talking blockchain, but I think I've definitely kept an eye on how you leverage new technologies to elevate storytelling, change storytelling, alter storytelling, and it's really fascinating. I mean, would love for you to just kind of talk about that for a little bit with folks.
Yeah, no worries. Well, look, personally, I went to like computer camp as a kid. Like I was totally, like geeking out on like, building my own video games back in like, the mid '80s. Like, when it was like, I mean, very, very basic programming, language, at that time. Um, it was so for me, like I've always had this kind of personal connection to technology. Um, but I think interestingly, um, I always explored that interest in technology through a creative lens. So, again, when I was at computer camp, like I'm building a race car game because I was into cars and I loved cars. And so like I was like, how can I create something that allows me to explore these worlds that I love? As I got into my professional life, um, and creativity really became the central focus of where I wanted to spend my time. Um, what I realized, what you do realize is, right, like these technologies are tools, right? Like they are tools that can empower, creators in their effort to bring something new to life. And so I think there's and it's funny because I've got a lot of friends who are um, directors, writers, artists, in other realms, and um, the the interesting thing is, I tend to kind of find that there's like, two camps, right? There are the camp of artists that are, kind of steeped in a technique, and that becomes kind of their technique, their process, and and they understand it and are so facile with that process that that's what allows them to create, right? Like um, they just they know their instrument so well, right? Like you look at Eddie Van Halen, and he's got no, like he doesn't even have to think about what he's doing. Like his fingers just go to where his brain, imagines, the sound coming from, and he delivers every time. Um, you know, um, there are other artists who are constantly exploring, new mediums, new technologies, new formats, because their process is one of like continual creation and innovation, not necessarily around something specific. I think filmmaking is a unique art form, um, in this way because you're really, while you may have an auteur at the center of the storytelling and the kind of world building and behind the movie, you still also, it's a collaborative art, right? It's not, like it's not Eddie, just wailing on his guitar and delivering, these crazy insane solos, right? Um, what you've got with filmmaking is like you need to have and you must have the participation and teamwork of a whole bunch of other artists around you, and there's so many things that can go wrong in the process. Um, so I think what I've always looked at in terms of technology is it's like it is a tool that helps us, you know, either expand the possibilities or refine our process and maybe even add some efficiency or structure to to the process that allows us to to do our work and build this creative in a better way. Things like VR came along, and I think the one of the projects you're referencing is a film called Help that I did with Justin Lin, and we literally had to go. Basically, it was Google that came to us and was like, "Hey, we've got this cool new technology." They had it was a guy named Rashid Al Gharab who had developed this technology as an Android capability where the phone could use the accelerometer and the gyroscope to essentially create kind of look around within a virtualized environment. And so then that was acquired by Motorola. Motorola was acquired by Google, and all of a sudden, the ATAP group at Google was like, what do we do with this? And they decided that like telling stories was like a great way to kind of introduce this technology. And they had done a short film that was animated because of course it was really easy at that time to kind of create a three-dimensional animated world that you could look around. um, they came to us and were like, hey, what would you do with this if we work together? And Justin's first thought was like, oh, I want to do a kaiju movie. I've always loved big monsters, and it would be so cool. But and I want to do it live action. And Google's first response to us was, can you do that? Because honestly, like I hadn't, no one had ever really tried to do it before, and certainly not at scale. I mean, there had been some kind of there'd been some experimentation with spherical cameras and photography, but certainly not at a cinematic level. And we spent 6 months just working with technologists, trying to figure out like how can you assemble a photographic system that would allow you to capture a full spherical world. What does it take from a technological and a practical perspective to do that, and then what does it take from a technological perspective on the back end to put all these pieces together, right? Like how exactly do you stitch these images that you've created or captured? um, there's there's all kinds of I won't go into the detail of like the challenges there, but um, it was a great learning process. But ultimately, it was something that opened up a new avenue for the story that Justin wanted to tell. Right, like it created the opportunity to kind of expand on the ways in which he could engage with an audience, and I think that's really what's most has excited me about technology. And I think what the Web3 space is portends for the future of creativity and community. I think one of the things that's really been exciting to me personally, and you know is just how closely aligned this idea of creation and community is within the Web3 space, as as it relates to like these are the same things that we think about in Hollywood, and when you're managing these big franchises, is how can we create something that is going to empower or excite our community and get them more deeply engaged, and can be something that they can participate in. So I think I really do think that technology is the driving force behind these types of industries, because it's continuing to expand what's possible.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely a tech OG, man. I mean, computer camp sounds pretty badass to me, especially, back in the day when you were there, stuff was like literally like, taking off. So it kind of makes sense you got into crypto as well. And, you do know the entertainment industry inside and out. You do seem to like crypto. You're one of us. What does the rest of Hollywood currently think of it? Has their POV changed to date? Do you think that it will change again? Are they open to, kind of playing with this technology and seeing what it can yield, or are they kind of pretty close-minded toward this?
It's funny. I was on a phone call last night with a an investor group, and they were asking the same question. Frankly, they were like, or a variation of this question. They were like, what is how feasible is it that Web3 can be an area for opportunity in a film business, and what I was saying to them is you know it's all it's already defined itself as that, right? If you look to this community and you look to what has been built in this space, you have incredible, like, kind of global IP that have come out of Web3 and crypto. Like you're already seeing, like, these iconic characters, brands, worlds that, like, everybody looks at and instantly knows, right? Like where they came from and what they and what they are. Like, I think that's what's really exciting, is that but these worlds and these characters and these communities have been kind of organically built from the ground up by the audience. It's really kind of very unique and cool, because there's such a direct connection between the participants, in this community, and the building that goes on to continue to grow those communities and those worlds. So that to me is what's most exciting, because again, when you talk about linear media, you talk about film and television, it is decidedly a passive experience for the audience, right? Like you go into a theater, the lights go down, and you just enjoy this story that's being presented to you. And, like, that's an amazing experience. It's something that like, always inspired me as a kid, and that's why I'm in this business. Um, but I think the limitations of that are, like, how do you go deeper, and, like, how do you get more deeply involved outside of that one-off experience? And that's what I really love about Web3 and the crypto spaces. I think there is this opportunity for you know creators to build connectivity to their audience in a very, very direct and new way, that hasn't been possible before, without these types of digital, you know, kind of accessible technologies. I mean, I think if you just look at how digital has transformed linear media, right? You know, all you have to do is look at Netflix, and how they eliminated the need for physical, the physical transport of a DVD, from point A to point B in order for you to have this experience. And they turned it into a digital direct connection to their audience, and it transformed the entire industry. So I think those same forces are at play right now, within the creative communities, because now we're starting to see that, with the cryptosphere, with Web3, with what these technologies, we're now able to go directly to our audience, right? And communicate with them and participate in building with them. Like, that's what's really, really, really cool, and something I think that a lot of uh, I think most people in Hollywood are aware of just the power of it. Um, I think the innovation is going to come from the artists themselves, because I think you know um, it really requires, right, like, hands-on understanding and building, and it's gonna come from these types of partnerships that we're building with Hashflow, where we're bringing our expertise and our experience together, and collaborating around what's possible.
100%, man. And, kind of continuing that, I'm happy to hear that they're asking the questions at least. That at least shows that they're, willing to learn and trying to pick up, some thoughts from yourself as well. So that's definitely good to hear. And, you mentioned everything, digital, of course, like the space is digital, but there is a physical component. I know that consumer products and physical merchandise are often seen as a massive opportunity for studios. We're seeing some projects, release physical products and merchandise. As creators, like what role do you typically play in this in protecting your IP? And do you think we will see a Hashverse comic or collectibles someday?
I mean, I think we will, and I think like I'm just as excited for that as probably every one of you are. Um, and I think I think that's the intended goal here, right? Is like trying to continue to expand and upon this world that's being created and that we're building. Um, I think from the standpoint of how what role do we play, right, in this, and how do we protect that IP. I think what you're seeing right now, and I think also what the Web3 community offers to creators is more of an opportunity to manage that than has existed in the past, right? If you think back to um, you know there are a handful of IP, like massive IP like Star Wars, right, which was really controlled and guided by George Lucas, and that stemmed from the fact that he invested so much of himself and frankly his own money in building that IP that he was able to kind of really maintain control over the over what was built from that IP. Um, I don't think that is typical of the kind of the Hollywood apparatus, mostly because you've got the what the investment it takes to build these types of properties is so huge that you can't a single creator it's very unlikely that a single creator has the ability to kind of to do it on their own. They need the backing of a major studio. They need the backing of the enterprise, right, that can support its creation and exploitation and distribution. So I think and I think what has happened now over the last many years is that there has been a shift towards um, creator-driven companies and creator-driven, um, I think, businesses, and that shift has been empowered by digital technologies, by a kind of the efficiencies that have come with developing those worlds, right? I mean, even the shift from like 35 millimeter film to digital, was a massive, you know, created a massive democratization of like the process, right? Like all of a sudden, you know, you know, the tools for production were so much more accessible. So digital technologies have been helpful to kind of like make the tool sets more accessible, to people. You know, editing systems like Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro. Literally, you can get on your. I mean, I just saw that. I just read an article that Apple's about to release Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro, on iOS, and it's like, you know, to imagine that, like, 20 years ago, like I would be able to work with a professional, you know, um, nonlinear editing system on my cell phone. Like, 20 years ago, I didn't even have an iPhone, right? It's like it's crazy. So I think again, these types of technologies are driving that, and what that's doing is it's giving creators, a greater opportunity to participate and to be the driving force behind, how they bring these stories to market, how they introduce, these worlds to fans and communities. And again, you know, you think about you think about how Web3 has grown. It has grown out of these chat rooms and message boards and like platforms like Twitter, where you can find that direct connection and that direct audience. You can collaborate over those platforms. You can build over those platforms, and and then you can bring stuff to your audience directly. So again, I think that there is, incredible opportunity in that. It's really where I've invested all of my time, in my career over the last, decade plus, has been in helping to partner with, well, helping creators to bring their projects to life, but then also partnering with them to build businesses around that, that are independent and, can take a greater stake in what they're building.
It's a perfect segue for us, Todd. The earlier on, you were talking so much about just the importance of building community, and I think like a lot of what I took away from that last question was just how much these new tech platforms have democratized Hollywood and created direct access, and even to your point, just enabled folks to have those direct relationships with fan bases. For us, I mean, we're super lucky. We've got the Hash Game community, the heart of Hashflow. But you guys have obviously built some incredible fan bases, loyal supporters globally around all these franchises. Just would love to dig in a little bit. Have you built and harnessed such powerful communities? What do you think the key is to sustaining their expectations and happiness over time? Because I know a lot of times when you're touching, iconic IP, it can get really tricky at times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, oh, yeah. It totally can. And look, we all know those examples of like, you know, um, you know, projects that didn't connect with their community, or and and in the reverse, there's those ones that totally connected with their community, right? But may not have connected with, you know, the the executives or the studio that was putting out the project, right? Like, it's really interesting, to kind of think about this as a kind of like, you know what are we creating for, right? I think, if you are, building authentically, right, and you respect, and if you understand and respect the community, I think that's kind of like the first order of like importance. You have to, and you said this earlier, I think, Andrew, which is like, you know you kind of have to love it yourself. You have to be a part of that community. If you're not passionate about what you're building, then it's never going to come across as like authentic and real. And again, you see that happen, every once in a while, and it's really demoralizing, right, for the community and for the fans, because they're like, that's this totally doesn't respect what we've built together. Because I do think, even in linear media, right? Like, the audience feels like, they believe, and in many ways they are a part of what has been created, right? Because it wouldn't exist without their support. It wouldn't exist without, their commitment to this world, to these, characters, these stories. So, they are as much a contributor to the process, as the creators. And I think, that's when the greatest work comes about, when you see, a kind of really harmonious, effort on behalf of the creators leading the project, you know, that dovetails with, the love and the excitement that the fan base and audience has for the storytelling. And again, it comes like, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving, audiences everything they want. Um, uh, I don't think that anyone expected, to see any of the Avengers die in Infinity Wars, right? Like, it was shocking, and it was also challenging to like the expectations of the audience. So like, it put the audience in a place where they were, they were questioning, do I like this or do I not like this, right? But you know, I think the importance there was that it created, a deeply emotionally resonant, impact on these audience members, because they cared so much, and it was done in a way that, like, you know kind of respected, the community, and respected the storytelling, that had come before it, right? So, you know again, I think you can do things like that when you've built trust with your audience. And I think, in that instance, Joe and Anthony had built an incredible trust with their audience, leading up to that moment, that then the audience trusted, that they would, Endgame would come about, and there would be, some satisfying resolution to like this kind of devastating, completion of this movie. So it was like, you know, that kind of is, I think, what everyone's trying to build, right? Is, you have to build trust, and that trust comes from, an open dialogue that goes in both directions, and a and again, and a really, really healthy and respect for, the audience themselves, and why it is they're committed to this. Because because again, it's in those moments when, you see someone taking a story in a direction that's completely, you know um, antithetical to the principles of what that world is. That's when audiences really, I think, speak up, and they'll make their disapproval known. They will tell you, and especially in the world we live in today, where, a film is released, and there are reviews hitting Twitter and, other digital platforms, like, instantly. Like, like, people haven't even left the theater yet, and they're already commenting on what they've seen. And again, I think that cycle is even faster in Web3, right? Like, it's actually, honestly, it's like sometimes hard for me to keep up, because, I've got so many things that keep me busy in terms of my daily life. Like, I'll jump into Twitter, and all of a sudden I'll be like, WTF, like, what just happened? And I'm like scrolling back through, trying to figure out, like, what was going down over the last, like, 3 hours, that all of a sudden, like, there's this massive change. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's like, things move so fast nowadays. Like, you have to again, you have to be an active participant in the community. You've got to be respectful of their desires, their needs, and you know you've got to have a real strong desire um, to be one of them.
100%. I think, Todd, one thing I wanted to point to, it's so funny. I worked on marketing for one of the Fast movies when I was at NBCU, and I remember before Rotten Tomatoes. And I remember, like, how much the marketing model shifted. I mean, it was, and I don't know if this is still the case, but it was basically, you've got 1 week before film release to drive as much awareness as humanly possible, as many, folks into the theaters as humanly possible for opening weekend, because you don't know what that Rotten Tomatoes rating or score is going to look like. And then if it's good, the next thing you know, you don't even have to market that much. The movie's marketing itself. If it's not, that opening weekend was basically your number one revenue stream. So, like, yeah, it is interesting to see how much even just tech platforms that don't seem game changing can influence an entire industry and an entire model. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Look, it's funny because, and Andrew, I know you're, like, totally steeped in this, but it's like, the nature of, marketing and promotion and everything has changed dramatically, right? And again, I think that's why, you know one, the things that really are working. It's much harder, I think, today to it's very easy to reach people. I think it's very, very hard to build an audience, because there's just so much competition, right, for, attention, in every way. And so that's where it comes down to, like, again, you've really got to um, build something that people respect, and feel a part of. And it's one of the reasons why I think we're seeing, more and more of a shift toward this, kind of world building, and, these kind of, um, this intent to build kind of universes of content, and community, because, for it clearly works, right? For, if you look, the decades that Star Wars has existed as, you know a hugely iconic world of storytelling. um, Look at James Bond, right? I mean, people were consuming these books long before the movies started to be created. If you can, once you can find and build that initial audience, it's a lot easier to kind of add onto it and service it long term, than it is to kind of start from scratch. And so that's why, when you are building, something from the ground up, you really need to take a lot of time and care and really put a lot of thought into those foundations that we talked about earlier, right? And it's been one of the because if you can do it well, it's one of the most exciting things you can do, because it's like you get to watch this this new creative world be born, and that frankly has been what's been so exciting for us, is to join you guys in helping to build the Hashverse, and see this world come to life.
Well said, sir. And look, I know you have to go make some movies, so we have only one question for you, and then we'll let you go on your way if that's all right. The last one I have for you is, I know that Web3 gaming is a really hot topic right now. How is Superconductor currently approaching gaming and/or the gamification of Hollywood IP?
So, what's really interesting is that I think that um, you know Web3 will transform kind of what we know gaming to be, right? Because you know even if you think about like tokenomics and like the participation of people within people kind of token holders within a community, right? The way in which we've seen, right, like the use of kind of utility, right, around tokenization, and like how that can actually engender participation from holders, right? Like this is there's an element here of interactivity that I think is incredibly unique and exciting, and I think gives you an opportunity to participate in this world directly. And in some ways, we all talk about like the metaverse. Facebook's changed its name. Thing about this is that right now, what we're seeing in Web3 is that it is allowing participants to engage directly and to connect with each other, and to find this kind of interactivity in this world that is again is an entirely virtual world, right? Like it's an entirely digital world that we're participating in, through this this system of Web3. So anyway, I think it's something that we're really excited about. I think it's where we think there's going to be incredible innovation. I don't know exactly what it looks like yet at the end of this, but I think that's part of the fun of exploring it.
100%. Look, Todd, we truly appreciate you joining us, man. I mean, this conversation was awesome. Lots of alpha in here. I'm glad it's recorded. People can give it a listen down the road and, see about all the things that we talked about today. And again, man, just really appreciate your time, and definitely go keep crushing out there, and keep making some incredible content.
Well, it's great to talk to you guys. It's been an honor for us to kind of dig in with you, build, and keep creating. So we're gonna look forward to keeping on with that. And thanks everybody for joining today. It's been really fun talking with you.
Todd, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Basic Degenomics is brought to you by Hashflow. We're live every Thursday with awesome people like Todd, having great conversations. So keep an eye out for the upcoming weeks. And thank you everybody for listening today. Have a great weekend. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.